Welcome to the Athletic Performance Podcast, a conversation for all things performance related, where we push the boundaries of speed, power, and strength. I'm your host, Ryan Patrick, and we're here to discuss, debate, and enhance athletic development for coaches and athletes alike. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Today on the podcast, I'm interviewing James Cerbie. James is a friend of mine, but he's had many different roles in my life. He's somebody I credit with a lot of my own transformation in my early 30s when he was my coach. He's been a mentor of mine, and we've even worked alongside each other for his previous business, Rebel Performance. James is the kind of guy who oozes integrity, and he's always making sure that what he's doing is aligned with his core values. His current business helps men build a body, business, and marriage that function at the highest level. And today we discuss some of the trade-offs that are required to be successful in multiple domains. I think this conversation has really relevant application to the athletes that I work with who have to make trade-offs in their personal and social lives in order to achieve their goals. We talk about consumption mode and how inaction causes people more problems because they never actually move toward their goals with purpose. And last, we talk about how systems are essential for setting the standards that allow you to stack wins that ultimately fulfill your vision. If you're somebody who has ambitious goals, I know you're going to love this conversation, and I know you're going to love what James has to offer here. If you get a chance, make sure that you hop on after the podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening. So I want to bring everybody up to speed on our conversation that started off the air. First of all, obviously, I work with a lot of young athletes. I think we're probably not going to touch on training to a huge deal today. Maybe we'll dive into it, but I think there's a topic that's really important just for the maturation of young athletes, for young athletes becoming young men and ultimately men, and just, probably to coaches everywhere, just this idea of being a man. And so one of the detours that I know you've made in business is you're kind of in this, what I guess you could call the masculine space, right? Which sounds a little cheesy, but when people look at you, they don't see, American flag style apparel. They don't see you next to a Lamborghini. You're not smoking a cigar. Like, what's going on, man? Like, how are you occupying the same space as all these shysters?
I know. Yeah. The masculinity market is it's a funny one, dude. Like, I just like don't get it. It's like they put on this image, and it's fine. Like, if that's them, like, that's great. Do you? But I'm not the guy who's gonna, like, yes, do I love America? Absolutely. I love living in this country, but like, I don't need to like have American flags all over everything I wear. And I have this like almost false sense of like patriotism to a degree. Like, it's like a militarized version of patriotism as well. Right. Cause like, I won't call any people out, but you see them running these events and they have these men come to, and it's like, they put them in military fatigues and treat it like they're entering boot camp. I'm like, that's not what it means. Like, be a man. Like, I don't need to dress up that way. I don't have to be in the military. Like, I don't have any interest in ever owning a Lamborghini. Like, I don't really feel the need to sit around and smoke cigars. It's just, I don't know. For me, it's like, it's all presentation. It feels very fake, right? Like, and that's just not who I am as a man. And so being in the masculinity market now is just, I always think it's funny looking at all of that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of guys are kind of over it. They don't love it necessarily. And I think they are attracted to a more like just realistic, down to earth conversation about like, hey, like, I am a husband, I am a father, I'm a business owner. And like, my day-to-day life, like, my goal is to try to build a business and a body, a marriage, and a life that all work at the highest level. Right. And the specifics of that definition are going to depend on you and exactly what you want out of each of those domains. But it's like, yeah, like I just don't love like this almost like militarized, like Playboy, like masculinity market, which seems insane to me. And then like you dig into all these people and it's like, oh, shocker. Like, they're all divorced. They all have like, there's like all these problems. And like, why are men going to them for like guidance and direction when like their lives are just kind of like broken in shambles? They just like give you this false appearance on social media that everything's amazing. But yeah, it is a wild space to be in and kind of like watching and observing. I wanted to bring something that's, I think, hopefully a little bit more real and honest and truthful that speaks to vastly more men, right? About like how we show up as husbands and fathers and business owners and leaders on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, they try to intensify everything. I said something the other week. I can't remember whose Instagram post it was, but I think I don't know if I put David Goggins in this space, but right, I feel like a lot of people who are adjacent to these men's group love Goggins, love Jocko, and even Jocko I'll put in a different category. But I feel like David Goggins has almost become like astrology for like wannabe men, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a 30-year IT worker with 3 kids at home. I have a desk job and I'm trying to pretend like I'm some kind of gravy seal because I'm reposting David Goggins quotes. And all these masculinity groups, like they are kind of toy soldiering, right? Most of these guys don't even actually have service. But they want this boot camp experience. They want to make it intense, and it seems like it's a lot of shame tactics to me, is what they use to actually motivate these guys. Because I was a part of one, I'll admit it, and I think there were some very valuable lessons that came out of it. But it also got to a point where I had been in so long, I'm like, I feel pretty good about myself. Like I'm not beating myself up for everything that I'm doing wrong, and it just became I kind of started to pick up on how the recruitment process works, but there was really no end game to it as far as actually improving myself, because you just had to constantly like beat yourself down and take the water hose or whatever kind of weird shit they're into.
I think toy soldiering is like a perfect description for it. Like I've not ever been in the military. Like I haven't. And I don't need to try to put on some false face that I maybe potentially was at one point. I haven't been, so I don't need to act and fake like I have. I have an unbelievable, tremendous amount of respect for people that have been in our military and that have served and that have protected our country and that have actually put their lives on the line and actually done the work to provide us with like the freedoms that we have in this country. Like, I don't need to sit around and fake and kind of like false posture that that's what I've been or what I do. Like, do I think that we need to do a better job of showing up with like focus and energy and intensity as men on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's not that hard or complicated, right? Like, we need to have energy and we need to point that energy in the right directions at the things that matter. And we have to execute on those things consistently, right? But I don't need like some false rah-rah cheerleader in my ear screaming at me every single day about how I'm soft, weak, pathetic, and like an inconsistent loser. I don't know. Like, I guess maybe some people need that kind of just like daily motivation in their lives. I've always been very intrinsically motivated, so I don't necessarily like feel the need to have someone screaming at me like I'm in boot camp every single day. Like, no, I can show up and just be a professional of my own life and like get my shit done and move my life forward and continue to grow and expand. Right. I'm trying to think like the best way to phrase this so that I don't like potentially look down upon like the work that they're doing, because I'm sure that like they are having an impact and helping a lot of men. I just don't love like the direction or exactly how they're doing it from this toy soldiering approach. It's just not my vibe personally at all.
Yeah, it would be like an Instagram fitness influencer. Like they're probably motivating some people to exercise, and I think there's value in that, and I can't discredit that. And I probably worry about nuances of biomechanics that don't even matter to somebody who's completely inactive. So it's like I don't want to discredit that because they probably are making an impact. But when you look at it at face value, it's all about the ass and the images and certain things that draw people in that maybe are a turnoff to somebody like us who kind of understand the bigger picture.
Yeah. We talked about this off air, right? Like, I just don't have any interest in building the absolute biggest business in the world or like flaunting my wealth in people's faces. Like that for me is just that's showboating. That's not what I want to do at all. Like the reason that I build and do what I do in business is because I have people that I want to have an actual impact on. I think the idea of like, how do I make 1 + 1 = 3? And I think like the idea in the Total Man Project is like, if I can help, a husband or a father that is a business owner, then I have the ability to have like a massive ripple effect off of that, because like then you can help a family, then you can help like a neighborhood, you can help a town, you can help a city, because like you've helped this one person then have a greater impact in their immediate vicinity, let alone then the impact that they can have in their business and the people that they help there, right? But largely it's about freedom and sovereignty for me, right? Like the goal is not to build the absolute biggest business in the world and make all the monies. The goal is to build a business that is fun for me to build. It's fun for me to deliver. It is aligned with like my values and beliefs and what I want, the impact I want to have on the world. It's, easy for me to sell because it feels like the work feels like play for me. And ultimately, like I want it to be like wildly profitable and lean, because like I'm not trying to work 60-hour weeks. Like the goal is to build a fun business that's lean and profitable so that I can provide for my family and we can be good on the money front, and then to maximize the amount of freedom and sovereignty we have so that we can enjoy life passionately, right? That number will be different for different people, right? But freedom and sovereignty lies at the center of a lot of how I think about building businesses and structuring systems in life. It's like, it's all centered around like, how can I be a better business owner? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? How can I continue to invest in my body and my mind daily so that there is consistent growth and expansion? Like I don't, what's the saying, right? Like I don't live to work. Like I work to live. And I just like don't need someone like chipping at me all the time. Oh, work harder. You're soft, blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's not the goal, dude. Like I have no interest in doing that for a long period of time. Do you have to work hard? Yeah. Do I work 60-hour weeks sometimes? Yeah. But like, if that's the status quo that you want to go to, of just this like kind of like hardo mentality, like if you're not working 80-hour weeks and you're just like soft, that's a losing proposition. I think you need to reassess your priorities and how you view life and business. Because something is broken if you're having to operate from that place all the time, right? And again, it depends on levels and scale, right? It's like I know how much money I want to take home every month for myself and my family to be good. I don't really feel a huge drive to make more money than that. I don't want the added complexity. I would rather just enjoy my life more. I don't know. I'm sure like there are people that are gonna be like, "Oh, you're settling. That's just soft." And it's like, no, that's just understanding my values and priorities.
Yeah, it comes down, when I hear you talk about this, I think about comes down to making specific choices and understanding what those trade-offs are, right? So for a lot of men, there's a cost to wanting to make XYZ money, right? Whether that's time or a number of other things that you may have to invest. And I think the situation a lot of people get in is maybe they unknowingly chase the wrong rabbit, right? So it's like I make all this money, but the consequence of that is that I haven't managed these other domains, and I have a terrible marriage and my kids hate me.
Yeah.
Or, on the extreme other end, there are people who are maybe great family men, but can't hold down a job. And so I think it's understanding those values. On a similar level, I talk to some of our athletes of, hey, if you want to play college, like it's going to require a certain level of commitment. And again, kind of to this idea of working 60 hours a week, I don't think that it's about the intensity of your focus and it being the most, gripping, hard, difficult thing you've ever done. But there needs to be a consistency in your decision making that understands you need more balance in your social life, that you're probably not going to be a teenager who's out drinking late on the weekends with their friends, that getting to bed early and getting up on time on Saturdays is going to be more valuable for you long term, to understanding that there are just some competing commitments and maybe things that are more difficult to manage. And, anyway, kind of going back to the men, I think a lot of us just haven't really sit down to define these kind of things. And knowing you as long as I have, I feel like you're always a guy who's lived by a code and understood what his priorities, values, and goals were. And that seems to just always emanate from you.
Yeah, I think that just as a whole in society today, people do a poor job of actually understanding like their core values and beliefs and like what they want in life. Like this is becoming more and more difficult to do because everyone is stuck in consumption mode. They're always reading books and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. They're on social media. They're getting flooded with all this stuff from the external world that is just telling them, oh, here's what you should want in life. It's all noise, right? Like you have to be able to like block all that out and sit down and say, no, like this is the path that I want to be on. It's like, I love the analogy of imagine that you're in a canoe, like on a big river, right? And then most people are just in the canoe without a paddle and they're just kind of like letting the current like of culture and society and life around them just pull them downstream because they're not consciously making decisions on the direction they want to go. But ultimately that puts you at some point in time that you get to a waterfall and it's too late, you can't turn around. Right? Like what I talk to a lot of the guys in Total Man is about, hey, like we need to have systems built into your life to make sure that we are constantly eliminating distractions, focusing on the things that actually matter, like the few essential things that matter, and that we are very deliberately moving in the direction that we want in our business, in our fitness, in our family, with our friends, and with our spirituality. Like, because those are at the end of the day, those are the big 5 domains, right? It's like I want to constantly be growing and expanding in my business, my fitness, my family, my friends, and my spirituality. And like you said, a lot of guys lose sight of those. Like plenty of guys crush in business and make tons of money, but they're fat and out of shape. They have a terrible relationship with their wife. Their kids don't know them. And they literally could not be less in touch with like who they are as a freaking person. And then you can like play that game around of like, oh yeah, you have like the fitness person who's like super jacked and crushes in the gym. But then like, again, like the issue is when you become overly myopic and we just like so focused on one domain, we lose sight of everything else. And then we allow all the external voices to determine and tell us what we should want instead of us saying, no, this is what I actually want. And this is why I want it. It's clarity in that vision, that path, and that purpose for your life. Right. And the thing you said about consistency is big because we talk a lot about standards, right? I think standards are huge. Like you're not going to reach your goals. You're going to reach your standards that you set for yourself. So like in the Total Man Project, the first thing we talk to the guys about is, hey, like we have to change the standards that you hold yourself to. Okay. Because like this idea or this standard that good is a winning standard is a losing proposition. Good is not good. Right? Like that is a lie that is being just like force fed to us by society. People that are good end up getting bad to poor results in their life, right? Everything, it grades down, right? Like if you do a good job, you get poor results. Just think about the number of like business owners you know. Oh yeah, he was a good business owner who went out of business. Oh, he was a good husband who got divorced, right? Like good is just a losing proposition these days. Like we have to like kind of hold ourselves to a higher standard of like outstanding, right? And that's what people have to realize is that if you do a good job, you get poor results. If you do a great job, you get good results. But if you do an outstanding job, you get pretty much all the results. It's not proportional. Like it's very heavily weighted towards the top. And so like we have to decide like, okay, cool. What standard are you holding yourself to? How are you showing up in every domain in your life as a man? My goal is to kind of give you the tools and the frameworks and the systems to help navigate and manage that. But ultimately, I can't give you the answers inside of exactly what that standard means for you. I think that's the problem. A lot of guys like want to outsource that. You cannot outsource that bit. You have to define what that is. Like whatever an outstanding standard is within business, within fitness, family, friends, spirituality, like that's gonna be a different thing for different people. So my goal is to give you the systems and the tools and the frameworks to kind of hone in and make it easier to see what that is and then to stick to that with consistency long term, right? But to sit around and say everyone needs to have $1 million a year business, like that's the standard, and that's not true. Like I would guarantee almost everyone listening to this, I was like, hey, if you collected $20,000 per month in profit from your business, would you and your family be in a pretty good place? Yeah, I think most people would be in an amazing place in life if they made $20,000 a month profit after taxes. That's not $1 million business. If you build it correctly and you use leverage, like even $15,000 a month in profit. Because we talked about this off air, like business and especially money is like the ultimate trap. If you don't have clear definitions around what you're shooting for there, then you get stuck in this more game of always just building for the sake of building. But again, so much of this just comes back to you actually being clear and understanding like what it is that you want within each of these domains, like your vision and where you're heading. So we can then actually get to work reverse engineer building that. Okay. And then catching yourself if you drift off course, right? Are you not holding yourself to the standard that you expect to see in this domain? Okay, great. Like, why aren't you holding yourself to that standard? Okay. But again, like it's a balancing act of you being able to define that standard and then maybe having some people around you that, hey, dude, I think you're setting your bar a little low for yourself. Right. But that was like a very long-winded, rambling response to your earlier question.
No, I think it definitely captures a lot of what you're about and what I feel like we're so aligned on. There's that quote again, huh?
Mm-hmm. Dude, I'm telling you, man, I just don't know where all the mucus comes from. It's like the amount of mucus that I have kicked out in about the last week is preposterous. It is insane.
You're going to need to rehydrate a little bit. One of the things that you've mentioned a couple times now that I think is worth diving into a little bit is this idea of distraction control, because it seems to be really intimately tied with the idea of setting your intention and setting your focus, right? So it can be a lot coming at people, right? So we're recording this in February. A lot of people set New Year's resolutions. They're coming off the heels of goal setting, maybe the only time of the year that they actually do it. And it can be challenging to manage all of these domains, and in some cases overwhelming to a lot of people, because they're living in a universe where they are not managing distractions. They're now reactive. Their day-to-day is just putting out fires, and they don't even know how the F they're going to start getting one foot in front of the other to progress towards these new standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love there's a quote from James Clear in this realm. Like, we don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, right? Which is so entirely true. I think having goals are important, right? Because they give you direction and show you where you're heading. But at the end of the day, like, goals are incredibly cheap. Like, again, we have to have standards. Like, if you want the goal of, like, let's take the goal of, like, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. Great. Well, then, like, you have to have the standard and become the person that will lose 10 pounds. Like, become the person and you will become the goal, right? But I think part of the other issue is, like, do you actually care about the goal? Like, a lot of people just, like, throw goals on paper. It's like, yeah, like, I saw this guy on social media talking about making $1 million. That sounds great. I would love to make $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm like, cool. Why? For what purpose? What are you doing with the money other than to just have it? Because, like, I would like to know exactly how you plan to use that and for what purposes. But it all comes back to systems, right? So the way that I teach this, and this is what I would consider to be like a personal effectiveness system. So I think all men need 3 systems. I think you need a performance system, which manages your day-to-day energy. So the energy that you experience on a day-to-day basis as a man is everything. If you have low energy, you are losing from the get-go. You are miles behind the starting line. You cannot function with low energy, period. So we have to have systems in place to make sure that your energy is as high as we can get it on a daily basis. We have to appreciate that energy comes from many places. Does your training matter? Yes. Does your nutrition matter? Yes. Does your sleep matter? Yes. Does getting 10,000 steps a day matter? Yes. But the other aspects of energy that are not talked about and overlooked, like the relationship with your wife, the relationship with your kids, your relationship with other elite men in your life, your spirituality, your meditation, your journaling, right? Like, we have to appreciate that energy is a multifaceted thing. And it goes beyond just, like, lift weights, go for walks, sleep, eat good food, right? Because I can tell you, like, you can be amazing in the gym and be awesome with nutrition and all that jazz, which is huge and important. And, like, we hammer that with the guys because it is so important. But, like, if you and your wife aren't in a good place, like, that's going to be a massive, massive energy sap for you. It's just going to suck energy out of your day-to-day life. Okay. So system number 1 is we have to have a performance system to make sure the energy is at the highest level possible every day, so you can lead effectively as a husband, as a father, and as a business owner. The next system we need is a productivity system. I actually don't like the word productivity. It just works because there's going to be 3 P's here, right? I like the word effectiveness better. Productivity implies getting lots of things done. It does not imply you're getting the right things done. Mindfulness is having an appreciation, understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. We want to have the intersection of those 2 worlds, which is effectiveness, which is getting the right things done, right? So we need productivity to make sure that you are managing your focus and your time appropriately. And then the third system is, like, we need a system for profit. Profit systems are what drive money in your life. We live in a world where money is a requirement. It will not make you happy per se, but, like, having money stress is the worst. And you want to have money to solve your money problems, because money is what is ultimately going to, money lies upstream. Like, financial freedom in my mind lies upstream of true freedom. I think it's hard to be, like, really free and have sovereignty if you don't have financial freedom. So we need systems for profit to drive money to support you, your family, and the lifestyle that you want to live, so you can ultimately have that freedom and sovereignty. Okay. And so those are the 3 big systems that have to be in place: performance, productivity, and profit. And so those are the 3 big things that, like, I focus and work with guys on now. And it works out well because, like, those are all, like, really big strengths for me based off of, like, what I've done for the last 10 to 15 years of my life. Does that answer your original question? I don't even remember what the original question was. I just like started going.
No, we're just kind of riffing on this because I think it's so important for anybody who, I guess I should clarify. My default stance is that none of us are at our potential.
No.
I just inherently believe there's inefficiency in all of us. I think some people's standards are too low. I think their ambition can be too. I think there's a lot of ambitious people who want to accomplish big things, but I think it can be misguided, short-lived, or whatever else. But I just operate from this stance, especially with like some of the kids that I work with. Is hey, we can work on this for the next 4 to 6 years. And I still don't know if you're going to reach the ceiling of your potential. Some people will hear this and be like, well, I'm making $1 million, so I need to be making 2. But that's not even what we're talking about. We're just talking about having harmony across all these domains, right? So I don't even know if there's a question here. I just think we're just kind of riffing on this idea of just how to optimize life, because
you need an operating system. That's the way I talk about it. Like, this is an operating system for your life as a man to build a business, body, marriage, and life that all work at the highest level. And the highest level, again, is going to be dependent upon how you define highest level, because that's going to be different for different people. And that's okay. But like, you need to have the tools and the resources and the frameworks to push those things forward in those domains and to not become myopic and drop the ball, right? Because you can't afford to drop the ball. Like, the stakes are too high, especially like in the family domain and the relationships in your life. I always like the analogy of like, if you're juggling balls, right? Like, some are made of rubber. If you drop it, they bounce back up. Some are made of glass. If you drop it, they shatter. Like, the family and the relationship one tends to be pretty glassy. Like, you drop that one, it's very difficult to recover. And again, it's just a matter of understanding and sitting down to say, okay, like, let me give you an example of this, right? So if we think about like a personal effectiveness system for men, here's how I think about it in my mind. It's kind of like a pyramid. Take a pyramid, like flip it upside down. So like the points on the bottom and the white parts on the top. So at the top of that, you have like a vision. You need to have a vivid vision, like 25-year vision of where you're heading in life within every domain. It's not just a business vision. It's a vision for like, where am I in business, in my career? Where am I within my family? Where am I in my body? Where am I in like my spirituality? All those things we've already talked about. I need a vision of where I'm heading. You have to have an annual system where we kind of roadmap the year ahead for you. Right? Beneath that, we need to have some type of a rhythm. I like 8-week challenge periods. So I teach guys how to run their life in 8-week challenge periods instead of quarters. I like 8-week challenge periods better because it's just long enough to get something meaningful done, yet short enough you always see the deadline coming. Right? So we break the year down into 8-week challenges. From there, you have a weekly system and then a daily system. And then there's finally like an ultra focused block system of what you do when you sit down to actually get the mechanics of work correct. Working your way down like one side of that pyramid, again, this is hard if people aren't following me visually, but I've done this so much, I've got it in my mind, is getting clear on like what you should be doing, like what you should be focusing on. Working your way back up the other side of the pyramid is the doing. Because like, if I win work sessions, I win days. If I win days, I win weeks. If I win weeks, I win challenges. If I win challenges, I win years. I win years, I get to my vision. Right? And so let's just take like the daily system out of that as an example. So something that I'm going to be teaching the guys here soon, because we have a whole daily system built out. I'm kind of updating some bits of it, but it's like, guys, every single day, like, you should be writing down the following. You should be writing down, what is it that I am grateful for? How do I want to feel today? And then an affirmation statement of I am whatever the like thing that you're moving towards is. Like, what is the identity that you need to be? Right? Beneath that, you then need to look at kind of like what we call like our power 5. Okay. The power 5 is your body, your brain, your balance, your being, and your brotherhood. You should write down one thing in each of those categories that you're doing every single day. What investment are you making in those categories every single day? What investment am I making in my body today? I'm going to train. Great. At what time? Training at 6:30. Perfect. What investment are you making in your brain today? I'm going to read 20 pages at 6:30 p.m. at night. What investment are you making in your balance, which is your family? I'm going to send a love note to my wife this morning. Or, hey, it's massage night. Or, hey, it's date day. Or, hey, we're going to run our weekly marriage meeting today, right? In your being, right? Your spirituality, what investment are you making in that today? Are you meditating? Are you reading scripture? If you're religious, are you praying? Maybe you're going to go for like a long walk in nature, right? And the last one is like brotherhood. Who are you connecting with today? Like, call a friend, text a friend, get a coffee, like just send them a note. right? But like you have to make small investments into each of those things daily. And that doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, but it does take a tremendous amount of intentionality, right? And then beneath that, now we start talking about like tasks and to-dos. Like, great, like what's your priority task today? Awesome. What goal does this actually tie back to? Because like we're not just going to do things for the sake of doing them. Like I want to know what's the number one thing you have to get done today? What goal is that moving you towards in your 8-week challenge, right? And then we talk about secondary and tertiary stuff like that. But it's like all that needs to then get moved onto a calendar. So it's just there are systems of intentionality here to make sure that all this stuff is being taken care of on a day-by-day basis, and it's all moving you towards the direction that you want to be moving in.
Yeah, I have three thoughts on this. Number one, I'm a huge victim of this, but I think people tend to overestimate what they can do in the short term and underestimate what they can do in the long term. Second is this idea of that's a lot of work to go through, right? So people listening to this, they're probably like, I just need like a checklist of to-dos today. You know, they're not, a lot of people are not willing to put in the planning that goes into that, right? So if we're running You Inc., so you're now a business, right? You need a business plan for how you're going to operate, or this is your operating system if you're a computer. And in doing so, I think they fail to cut out the things that are actually not important to them, but they just haven't taken the time to identify this. And then the third thing, and this is just from my experience, the elite men to be around is so, it's a difficult thing. I mean, I've talked to you about my brotherhood friend and the chaos that has happened with that. And it's just hard to find guys who I think are so aligned with this. So I know I'm just throwing a lot out, but what are your thoughts on this?
It is extremely difficult to find guys that have this, that want to commit to a standard of outstanding in every aspect of their life. Most guys, I think, reach a point and they just kind of settle. Like they get married, they have kids, they settle into their career, and they just go autopilot. Like they don't really have much passion. There's not really much vision. They're not really moving anything forward. They live pretty much just to like get through the work week and then grab a beer and watch the game on the weekends. And it's just kind of like that on repeat all year. Right. I can't stand that. That drives me insane. Like, so Kelsey and I, my wife, were out to dinner. This was months ago now. We sat at a table next to like 4 guys that were traveling for business. It was a nicer restaurant. And I was like eavesdropping. We sat, like the tables weren't that far apart. So it was impossible to not hear what these guys are talking about. And I swear to God, like one of them literally verbatim, he was like, yeah, you know, like once you get married and have kids, you just gotta stop caring. You just settle. And I looked at it and I'm like, it was so hard for me to like bite my tongue and not say anything. I just like looked at the table. It was just like a bunch of just like yeah, they had on nice suits and like these guys clearly make some money. But I'm like, man, you guys just, you look fat, you look out of shape, you don't take care of yourself. Like you do know that like you're responsible for doing more than just like bringing home a paycheck. But I think that is more of like the normal attitude than not. Like I think more people have that thought than people that think the way we do. And it's really like frustrating for me to sit around and watch because I think the point of life is growth and expansion. I think that is ultimately the point of life is for us to continue to grow and expand until it's over, right? I think when you stop growing and expanding, like life is pretty much done at that point. Now, how you do that will probably be different at different seasons of life, but it's like, I can tell you from experience, like in the lab, we ran a centenarian study. So we looked at people that were 100 years old and like, we're trying to say, cool, like what commonalities do we see with these people? There were a lot, like one being community was huge. Like they all had amazing community and family. But another one that really stood out to me was like, God, these people were just like so still like engaged and curious and on fire about life. Like they were still learning new things. Like they were still like actively getting out and doing stuff. There was just this passion for life that was like very tangible. And I think too many men and too many guys have lost that. And then they kind of get in circles where they are just in an echo chamber of getting that back from everyone else around them. And it's like, you will be the 5 people you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with people who think that way and are kind of like autopiloting through life, like you probably will as well, right? And then another point you made, I think, was really important, which is this idea of being able to focus. Like elimination is the way forward. Like the way forward is not trying to do more, it's trying to do less, right? We need to eliminate distractions and focus on what is truly meaningful, right? It's you accomplish more by working on less, right? Like the power of less is like very relevant there. And most guys are stuck because they're just trying to do way too much stuff. They don't have a filter in place to focus on what is meaningful. And so they end up like day-to-day life just feels like this terrible game of whack-a-mole, right? It doesn't have to. Like it really just does not have to be that way. Like it is a choice. I very much agree with kind of like the sentiment and the things that you brought up there.
Yeah, I think there was a seed of this brotherhood back to the Silverback One, right? So this was 2018. This was before COVID, right?
This was well before COVID.
Yeah, I remember I was going through kind of a crisis of like, I'm in my 30s now. I don't communicate with my friends locally as much. Some of them were still living out of town. And basically I didn't have this community, right? And the people that I did find myself around with, I was like, we are not aligned. They're now becoming fathers. Some parents just live for their kids. And I'm like, I still want to do things for me. I still feel like there's opportunity for me to be a husband. I remember my wife communicating to me at one point, like, hey, we're not really going out much. I'm like, oh shit, like I've kind of pumped the brakes on this. I haven't really shown up in that way. And it became really important for me to become on fire in that domain. So, right, I'm trying to level up all these domains. And that was the first time where I was around guys. I mean, Dobbs and Kieran and Jesse were in there. And there were a couple other guys who were just guys who were they play
life on offense.
Yes.
Like that's like I heard that the other day. Someone, who was it that said that the other day? I think Jesse Itzler, I think is how you pronounce the last name. Yeah, I saw he posted something about play life on offense, and I was like, yes, that is it. Like that is the slogan, right? Like play life on freaking offense. You only get it once. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, like, and like that Silverback group was so fun because you saw everybody got like a rising tide raised all ships there. Like It was wild to watch what happened in 6 months when you just got a bunch of like the right people on the bus pointed in the same direction with a lot of focus, energy, and intensity. And it's like, yeah, everyone got a lot better. And it was just
not just physically, because we still had some of that element of just, Dobbs was in the early stages of compound. There were just a lot of guys who blew up and did amazing things and are still doing amazing things. And it's nice to have, the brotherhood has since kind of expanded. We don't get to talk to these guys as much. We're not in the same circle now necessarily where I communicate with them on the daily. But there was just something special about that and being around elite guys, because your only option was to raise your own standards or just hide in the shadows.
Yeah, people need to see that more often. Like that's the power of joining communities like that, is that you're forced to kind of face the reality of like, oh man, like, I gotta step my shit up, right? But if you're like a big fish in a small pond, or you're just kind of a normal fish in a small pond, you're not gonna like feel that pull forward, which is unfortunate. I want to come back to the fact like people need to turn off like all the noise vastly more often and just get clear on where they're heading and why they're heading that direction and what they actually want, especially as men. Because like you mentioned, right, like my wife and I just talked about this the other night. It's like we're married, like we have our first kid, we want to have a couple of more, but it's like this isn't us entering this season of life. Because I had so many people that were like, oh yeah, man, well once you have kids, everything changes. And I'm like, yeah, certain things change, but like my wife and I still want to progress and grow. It's like that's not changing. I still want to progress and grow as an individual. She still wants to progress and grow as an individual. Like there's an element of you kind of have to put your own mask on first sometimes if you want to be able to show up as the husband, as the father, as the partner that you want to, right? Like I will do anything for my son and our kids. But like I also am hyper aware of the fact that like I am not just going to become kind of a modern day slouch of sense. because that's a terrible example for me to lead by. Like this, you'll relate to this too, because this was just yesterday, right? So like the gym here is behind me, right? And so I was working out yesterday, and little man was just like hanging out. It's funny that my deadlift platform has now become a part like playpen for him when I work out, but I just like felt this like unbelievably powerful sense of like responsibility there, because like it was just so much fun for me to like work out and then to see him kind of like laying there on the ground and just like staring at me and just like watching me intently. It's like, dude's like 4.5 months old. Like he's not that old yet. He doesn't like obviously get it with air quotes, but like he is already observing. Like he is watching, right? It's like, I want him to see me every single day show up, and I want him to see how I invest in my body. I want him to see how I invest in my brain. I want him to see how I work hard and invest in my business. I want him to see how I respect and honor and love his mother, and how we continue to grow as a couple and as individuals. It's like, I want to set that standard for him from day one. So that is his normal. Like I want him to go out into the world and see everyone else and be like, why are you guys all so weird? Like you guys all seem kind of lazy. Like, what are you doing? Right. And that just became even more like hyper aware for me, like with him being around all the time now. Like I heard someone say this the other day, like if you don't want your kids to become you, then you probably have a lot of work to do on yourself. Right? Like if you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I don't really want my son to be like me. It's like, why not? Like be the person that you want them to be. And again, that just comes back to standards, and it comes back to systems, it comes back to defining how we show up in these different domains in our life. Because like they're watching. It's like your children are watching you. Like you either have an opportunity to show up and lead, and if you don't, they will learn from someplace else. And that someplace else will probably be Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or someplace where I have no interest in him spending any time, because it is a hellhole, right? But it's a side tangent, because that was just like really top of mind for me after yesterday. I just remember sitting around and being like, man, like it's a different game. The stakes are significantly higher.
Well, it's what's the old quote? They may not listen to what you say, but they'll watch what you do.
Yeah.
So that becomes just infinitely more important, especially as I think about my own goals. It's like, am I the man that I want my son to model? You know, that's a question that just constantly goes through me. And this is kind of weird, maybe because I'm on 40 and like I'm just having all these like crisis of I'm like middle age now. But I'm like, okay, if I die tomorrow, will I be happy with the job that I did for my son and daughter? What will the legacy be if it stops right now? Is it what I want them to think about? Was I too quick to anger in certain situations? Was I lazy in my commitments of communicating and expressing love to them? Did I opt out of workouts because it was more convenient to watch TV or stuff? Like these are just little things. And obviously, I'm putting them under a microscope here, but these little decisions also become patterns and become habits and become the results that you get. And so I think about this stuff very intentionally all the time, right? And it kind of scares me a little bit, but I always invariably, and again, I think probably because you and I are wired this way, I'm always like, well, there's work to be done in this area. And I'm just really clear on that. And so, I go back and reevaluate and try to consider what I can do better, when I can do it better, and how I can do it better.
Yeah. Right. It's like, do I want my son to see that I hit snooze and skimp on my priorities? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling it today. I'm just going to hit snooze and sleep in. I'm just going to miss my workout. It's okay. Right. It's like, no, like that's not okay. I don't want him to see that. Like, I want him to see consistency and focus and effort and joy and fun and love. But again, this all comes back to this idea of intentionality. Like we live in a world that literally conspires against you. Like the modern world is built specifically to distract you. Mm-hmm. Like everything is built to pull you away from the things that matter and the things that are essential. It takes an incredible amount of intentionality and purpose and systems and structure to not allow that to happen, to not get pulled into the noise, to not allow modern media and social media and all these things, all the voices screaming at you, to just like distract and pull you away and turn you into just like a modern mindless consumer that just basically gives all your power and energy to other people. It takes a lot of effort and intent, but it's worth it. It's like, I would rather be in control of my life than allow other people to be in control of my life.
Yeah, I 100% think this is an incredibly valuable lesson and talk for anybody who does have big, audacious goals, right? Not just men. I'm communicating with a lot of the athletes that we work with on a day-to-day basis. And if I can kind of put a neat bow on this conversation, I think there are a few points that came up that I'm going to address first, and I'm going to leave it to you to add on to wrap this up. Number one, there needs to be a lot of distraction control, because we're in an age of consumerism and dopamine hits with everything from social media to just, anything that can create procrastination. I think elimination of things that are not aligned with your true core values and goals is absolutely critical. And then I think a system, some way to manage and audit yourself along the way is critical. And what else do you have?
Yeah, I totally agree with those 3 points. I think the other one I would add in there is like if you want to get more out of your life, like the first thing you have to do is raise your standards, right? They're just so important. Like if you think about your athletes as an example, if you have a high school athlete who's like, oh, I want to be a D1 athlete or I want to go play professionally. It's like, okay, great. Like let's look at those people. How do they live their lives? What are they doing? Right? It's like you have to be the person before you can be the goal. So you have to take on the identity of, oh, okay, like I am a professional athlete. I am a Division I athlete. So, okay, cool. Like how often do they practice? When they do practice, do they go through the motions or they show up with like a lot of intensity and focus? Are they going out drinking on Friday, Saturday nights, Wednesday nights, and then having to like sleep in, or are they like getting up and working? Right. This is like one of those funny stories I think about a lot. So actually, I just like wrote an email that's going to go out next week on this, so it's top of mind for me. If you think about 3 like very high performers, so take Tony Robbins, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and Dave Chappelle. Like what do those 3 guys have in common? Well, if you look at what they did early in their career coming up, they increased the frequency and intensity at which they were doing the thing that they needed to do to get better. They didn't act like anyone else because they realized, oh, if I act like other people, I'll get the same results as other people. Like Tony Robbins was trying to get started as a public speaker. Like he now sells out 15,000 plus person events multiple times a year, like no qualms, and dude obviously crushes. But like he looked around early on in his career, is like, well, all these other people that are trying to do the public speaking thing, like they speak maybe like once every month or once every like 6 weeks. He's like, I'm gonna go every weekend. So he literally like quadrupled the frequency with which he was getting repetitions. Kobe Bryant like famously talked about how like it was either in high school, some point early in life, he was like, well, I saw everyone else around me like would just go to practice in the afternoons. So I figured if I just woke up earlier and got an extra practice in every day, I could get better literally 2 times faster than everyone else around me because I got 2 times the reps and exposure. And then everyone's like, okay, Dave Chappelle today is obviously like he's the GOAT, right? Like it's Dave Chappelle. Go look at like documentaries of him early in his career. He would do 11 stand-up routines in a single night in New York City when he was getting started. Because he's like, I need to learn faster. I need more repetition. I need more exposure. He's like, he wasn't out just being like a slob and just like playing by the status quo. Like that's what an outstanding standard looks like. It's like, oh, what's everyone else doing? Okay, cool. Well, if I do what everyone else is doing, I'm going to get the same results they're getting. You have to figure out a way to be different if you want different results and outcomes. But I really like the story of those 3 because everyone sees successful people as they are today. They don't see what went in behind the scenes to get them to that point. And so like for athletes that are in high school, right, thinking about going to college or professionally, it's like you need to like really seriously look at that. It's hard to do at that age because you're not mature at all. Like you're not like it's just not. Very few high school kids can have the capacity to think that way, right? But you find some occasionally, and they end up being the ones that are like quite exceptional. But yeah, that was like the one thing I think I would add to what you brought up.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's just, it's good to always have somebody like that to model behavior after. Well, man, I super appreciate you coming on, man. It's great to chat. Obviously, we go way back. We're thick as thieves. And I just, man, it's an honor for me to have you on here. But where can my listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, so James Cerbie is pretty much how I exist everywhere on the internet now. So jamescerbie.com. I think I have like 2 Instagram accounts. James Cerbie on Instagram. One of them is active and has more followers. That's the one. I'm on LinkedIn now. I have a Twitter, but I don't really do anything over there. So, I mean, the best place to be, honestly, is just like go to my website and get on the newsletter. That's where I do my most stuff and share my best work.
All right, man. I will send them that way. I appreciate you, man. We'll catch up soon, okay?
Appreciate you too, brother. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Take care. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate and review us with 5 stars only. Then subscribe so you can get all the latest updates.